Hi, Melina here, and I haven't done a wrap-up in a couple of months. I've kind of gotten behind on it all, but I've still been reading consistently throughout the year, so I wanted to do as quick as possible a like year so far wrap-up, like a 1/3 of the year wrap-up, and I think I have 18 books to talk about. Some of them, whether they're ones that I read from like just casually at a bookstore, from the library, ebooks, I don't have them, and I don't have like the technology or patience to try to put a picture there, but you know, I'll be talking about it. So I'm gonna say the name, the author, what I rated it, and just any quick thought bullet points that I have. The first 3 books I read in the year, they're all picture books for the category of the Goodreads like Choice Awards for that category. My mother and I wanted to read some of the choices and see how we felt about all of that. And I read 3 of the choices, which were Island-Born by Junot Diaz, illustrated by Leo Espinoza. I gave that one a 5 out of 5 stars. I think that's the one out of the ones I read, at least, that I think should have won. I feel like it was the most in-depth. It had like great metaphors. And it's basically about being like a second-generation Hispanic person and feeling disconnected from like your heritage and where you're from, because you're not necessarily from that specific place. And it's beautifully written, it's very nicely illustrated, and that's the one I think should have won. I also read Prince and Knight by Daniel Hack, illustrated by Steve Lewis. I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This is the one that I'd probably purchase if picture books weren't so expensive for myself. It's a queer male-male romance. It's more simply written than Island-Born, but it's basically just like a, you know, little adorable slice of life, like mainstream, like it's sold in Barnes & Noble and stuff, picture book for children that's queer. And I think that that's like fucking crazy. And it's very cute, and it's very easily readable. And I think the one that was the most simple out of the 3 that I read is called I Am Enough by Grace Byers, and it's illustrated by Ketra Abu. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but you know, we tried. I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. I still think that it conveyed an appropriate message for children of like diversity and acceptance and loving yourself and whatnot, but it felt a bit more simple, the writing. Like there was just very short, kind of choppy sentences. The illustrations were gorgeous though, and they all featured different women of color, disabilities, and all that stuff to kind of pass on the concept of you are enough kind of thing. Then the first picture book, not picture book, the first physical book that I have a copy here to actually show you that I read is 101 Things That Piss Me Off by Rachel Ballinger. This is Colleen Miranda Singh's like sister. I wasn't too familiar with her before I read this, but we had a copy and we got it in at my store, like new, and that would be like the one that casually when I was cleaning the store and whatnot, I would read like a page here and there of, because they're just random like antidotes of things that like piss her off. Lots of them were relatable, lots of them were, you know, well financially equipped white girl first world problems that didn't really seem like legit problems, and half of them were really valid and stuff. It was fun. I'm still gonna keep it. It made me want to watch her videos, and now I enjoy watching her content. It's not life-changing, but it's relatable and it's fun, and there's a whole page-long rant in here that she has on soup, and I always felt in the minority of hating soup, and I was glad to see my feelings reflected in a book. And so we have this one. Next one I have is, I gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars, by the way. Next one I have took me a bit longer than the rest because it's a bit thicker than the rest so far, and that is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling, and this is the illustrated edition that's illustrated by Jim Kay. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I read the first one last year, loved it. This one was very fun, very different paced from the first one. So it has possibly, at least so far, I'm almost done with the 3rd book, and I'm reading through the series for the first time. One of my favorite characters in this universe, which is Gilderoy Lockhart. I am aware that not many people like him, but I love him, and I think that I would read a whole, like, the books that he, like, publishes in this world. If J.K. Rowling ever decided to write one that's, like, in his perspective, I would read it. I would love it. I loved everything, like the elements, like the flying car. I loved, seeing them interact more so in their classes. I loved the murder mystery element that was kind of hanging around it. And I think my favorite thing, besides Gilderoy, that this book did was everything to do with Tom Riddle's diary. I loved how that was written. I loved kind of the slow build-up and the mystery that was behind that, and how that played out. This was great. It's illustrated gorgeously, and yes, I'm actually enjoying immersing myself in this world more so than I thought I would. And so there's that one. And those were... I was going to say those were all the books that I read in January, but there's one left, and that is an ebook called The Cabin, Mia Story by Natalie Stark. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It's short, it's steamy. If you want to read some fun, like, good sex scenes, this is appropriate for that. If you, like, want to look for, like, a solid, like, fun, steamy new adult romance, this isn't where I'd go. The romance was kind of and it's supposed to be more of a taboo romance. It has religious elements in it, and just, it's a lot of sex. And that's the part that it's good for. I feel like the character development and the romance itself fell a little flat for me, to the point where I'm not sure if I would continue on with the series, but I appreciated it for what it was. It was very short, and it was one of the books that was on my TBR on Goodreads for the longest, and I'm excited to finally take it off. So, that's the thing. Now, the books that I read in February. The first one I have here, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars to, and that is Things I'm Seeing Without You by Peter Bogdanani, I think is how you pronounce it. I've seen a lot of people when there was like a package that had like this Forest of 1,000 Lanterns and like There's Someone Inside Your House as like a promotional package from a publisher, and nobody seemed excited to read this, even though this seemed right up my alley, probably because I like depressing shit. And this is about a girl, her name is Tess, and she had a boyfriend who was a long distance, like online kind of boyfriend. She had met him before, but most of their relationship took place over the internet. And when the book starts off, he has recently committed suicide. And so this book deals a lot with grief. So trigger warnings for that if you're not super into that. I would also say trigger warnings for depression and thoughts of self-harm and whatnot. But it's very nice, it's very flowery, it's very beautifully written. I would totally read more from this author. There was a relatable protagonist, and she kind of hated the world, but it made sense why, because it's a dark book. And her father is in the business of arranging alternative funerals, which is just weird. And it's like funerals that are like, okay, this person was a cabaret dancer, and so it's a burlesque show funeral, and there was all these weird, interesting elements that still made it funny and fun and very compulsively readable. I think I read this in like 2 days, so I would definitely recommend this to people, and I feel like not a lot of people have given it a proper chance. So we have that one. Next one we have is an arc, and that is Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. This came out in February, and so I was like, why not? I decided to read it. This is a nonfiction book by Matt Haig about anxiety. I don't know why I pronounced that weird, but that's what this book is about. It's little thoughts and like stream of consciousness that he thinks of and stuff when he goes through panic attacks or when he knows he's about to get one, and how that influences his relationships with the people around him. I think it's very beautifully written. It's very relatable. This is an extra copy that I picked up to give to either like my sister or my boyfriend, but so it's blank, but my copy that I can't find for whatever reason has lots of like tabs, and it's one of the only books that I like wrote notes in the margins and I underlined and highlighted, because it was such an interactive kind of book. Like, it felt like an experience, and it felt like there were so many things on like every single page that I wanted to remember and like look back on later, that it felt like too excessive to tab every single thing that I felt was tab worthy. And again, this might be triggering for somebody who has anxiety, but if not, I think that this is a good look into the mind of somebody with mental illness, and I would recommend it to people who are curious. So I read quite a few nonfiction books at the start of the year. Next, I have, which I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5 just because It is very short, and it felt like still like almost half the pages felt repetitive, and it felt like it was trying to fill in for a page count. So I feel like if it was shorter and it was what it was without trying to kind of regurgitate what it's saying, it would have received a much higher rating for me. But the next book that I read, I gave a 4.5. It was almost perfect, out of 5 stars, and that is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I've always had the other book, Final Girls, on my TBR, and I was always excited to pick it up. But this was one of the choices for the Buzzword Readathon, and I was like, okay, why not? I bought this brand new from Barnes & Noble, and I read it, and it was fantastic. I, along with Lala from Books and Lala, realized recently that I love the summer camp kind of setting for books. This is a book about a woman who, when she was a teenager, she went to this like sleepaway kind of camp, and the 3 girls that she shared like a cabin with, they go missing one day and they are never heard from again. And so the camp closes down after that, and fast forward like 15 years, this woman's like in her like 30s, and she gets invited to go back to that camp. And she's had so much like PTSD from what's happened. She's a painter, and she like paints these 3 girls who went missing every time, and it's just a thing where she can't think anything about anything other than that. And so she goes, and she's kind of like, she goes there to be a counselor, and it's her kind of figuring out what happened and living that experience again. It's so wonderfully written. The characters are great. It's a lot. Trigger warnings for PTSD and for violent acts, for lots of allusions to sexual misconduct, I guess, is the best way I can explain it as a trigger without explaining what happens. And yeah, I loved the characters, specifically Vivian and the new batch of Dogwood Girls. And I would totally recommend this to anyone who likes mysteries or thrillers or horror novels. This was just fantastic, and it's definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this year so far. Okay, next. That was the last book I read in February. I didn't read too much in February. The next one, my first read in March, was called Little Moments of Love. It's a Katana Comics collection. It started off as a series on the internet of this girl who would draw little comic strips of her and her boyfriend, and then it got more popular, and it like blew up, and she now has a book of all these little comics. A lot of them are the ones that are featured online, and they're just very cute. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. A lot of the stuff, like all the things that are tabbed here, were things that reminded me exactly of me and my boyfriend, and we felt like the illustrations looked like us. My sister and my mother like referenced that it looked like us a lot, and yes, I just love this. I think just thinking about it makes me very happy. I think it's beautifully done. It's very cute, and if you ever want like a cutesy, fun, light kind of graphic novel, I would definitely recommend this to anyone who's looking. And it's just very adorable art style as well. And so there's that one. That was the first one in March. The next one is another one of my favorite reads of the year. I'm a little behind on the hype train, I guess, but that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This one, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars after I finished reading it. I have debated since then just changing it to a 5 out of 5. I think it's a remarkable book. It's just, I usually am one of those people who rates things on an enjoyment scale, and it is a very anxiety and sad, like, triggering book. It's for anyone who's still left who hasn't read this book, or at least doesn't know what it's about. It is about a girl named Star who is out after a party one night with one of her friends, and he's unarmed, and they get pulled over by a police officer, and he gets murdered, and it's everything that happens after that. It's like her dealing with her feelings towards cops, and kind of that weird feeling of of being afraid of people who are supposed to protect you, of how people of color need to have the talk about police officers and how to appropriately speak to them, and that's something that white people don't have to really deal with. you get to see this beautiful, like, juxtaposition of her life in Garden Heights and how she is around all of those people, and then her life at her prep school, where most of the people are primarily white, and how she deals with all of those people. And it's just very beautifully done. The writing is amazing. The characters and the dialogue are some of the best in any YA book ever. Star is probably one of my favorite YA female protagonists I've ever read from. She has a wonderful family. One of my favorite literary fathers is definitely Maverick. Love her relationship with her boyfriend and with her brother and all of her friends, and how beautifully, without, I feel, seeming too preachy, that it addresses race and, like, modern culture and how to handle all of the racism that is still abundant nowadays in this century. And it's just a beautiful book. I also really loved Khalil, and I was wondering how much of an impact he would make and how you can build a whole book around that one incident, especially since it happens in the first chapter. But it was so beautifully done. And it's thick. It's like over 500 pages, but it just flies by because it's so beautifully written. And I have On the Come Up, and I can't wait to read it because it was just perfect. Next, I have this book. It is Strengths Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath. And this is a textbook that I had to have for one of my business classes, and it's kind of about, you take this quiz and you kind of harness how to be the best employee and professional person that you can be based off of, you take this quiz, and it tells you, like, the 4 or 5 things that your personality type deals best with, and if you spend more time focusing on the things that you're good at and just doing mainly those rather than just spending so much time obsessively trying to fix the things you're weak at, you will be able to succeed more so in life and in whatever professional field you want to. And first of all, it's adorable. It's so small and cute. It's one of the only textbooks that I had to, like, order, like, a physical copy of, and I ended up tabbing and researching so much, and I was so excited at, like, the concept of this class because it was the most fun I've ever had reading a textbook. So I would recommend it to anyone who's curious about the test and wants to take it. I mean, then again, I am aware that the test is kind of expensive, and I probably wouldn't have taken it otherwise unless it was already paid for through my schooling. So do with that information what you will. And I gave that one, I believe, a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I have here came as a recommendation from my coworker / boss at the time, and he said, because I told him that I wanted to get into Chuck Palahniuk, that this was his favorite book by him, and that I should start here instead of, like, with Fight Club or something like that. So I started here. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This was so weird, so compulsively readable. It has magical realism elements. I realize I love books about people who grew up in evangelical cults. It's very dark, it's very disturbing, and sometimes, yes, it feels like that just for shock value, but I love that kind of stuff. I love Rob Zombie films and whatnot, so I love that kind of thing. And it has made me realize that I really am into this author's writing. I definitely want to pick up more from him. I loved the strange romance that brewed, and I love that these are very dark, very imperfect characters that you still end up rooting for. And it deals a lot with suicide, and I would say a lot with surviving sexual assault and the trauma that comes with that. Other than that, it's about a guy who is the last remaining survivor of a cult, and you are listening to him as he is talking on, like, the sound box thing on a plane, because he has hijacked it, and it's him telling his life story before the plane crashes. So this, you can kind of tell whether or not you want to read it from the description. Next, I have What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It's one of the best contemporary books I've read. It is beautiful. It is about 2 boys who meet one day, and then I don't really know how to describe it too much without giving it away, but, like, they always are trying to find each other and trying to fight against the universe that seems like it's trying to pull them apart. I loved both characters. I preferred reading from the Ben like chapters. Look, I preferred reading from Ben's perspective, so I feel like I will enjoy Adam Silvera's writing because I've never read anything else by him. But Arthur was, his chapters were more compulsively readable because I feel like I click more with Becky Albertalli's writing style. I loved everything about this besides like the epilogue, I would say, and the best friend in this book reminds me a lot of my boyfriend, so I just loved all of the side characters in this. It has great parental relationships, and it's just overall 5 out of 5 stars. If you like contemporary romance, read this because it's amazing. It has Hamilton in it. It has everything. Next, I would say, okay, I read How to Train Your Dragon, gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I expected it to be like the movie. It was nothing like the movie. I still loved Hiccup and the father, Fergus, but I think that was his name. But other than that, I didn't really care for a lot of it, but it was fun. It was light. It was very younger than I thought it would be, even for a middle grade. So I read that on ebook. Do with that what you will. Then I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is A Whole New World, A Twisted Tale by Liz Braswell. This is What If Aladdin Never Found the Lamp, which is kind of inaccurate because he still finds the lamp in this, but whatever. But this is kind of a story in which Jafar becomes a dictator. If that sounds cool to you, totally get into it. I love the Aladdin movie. The first third of this book is pretty much the Aladdin movie retold in book form, which I was down with, but I know a lot of people weren't. And then the rest does kind of read like Disney fan fiction, which people say as a bad thing, but I honestly loved it. There was parts of it that felt slow, like it took me a while to get through, but I felt like it was always really fun and interesting and engrossing. It's a very dark book. If war and murder and dissecting bodies and whatnot isn't something that appeals to you, this is kind of like Game of Thrones meets Aladdin. And yes. And the second to last book I have to talk about is The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. April was Poetry Month, so I decided to read this. It's very beautiful. Some of the poems seem kind of wet, but a lot of them I thought were beautiful. A lot of them I can dig. I am totally going to read the rest of the series. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And yes, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it highlighted a lot of self-love, and I loved the, I think it was the damsel part? I could be wrong. It's a very triggering book. If you, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, sexual assault, emotional trauma, depression, anything, if you are triggered by anything, I would recommend just being a bit hesitant when you come into this one. And the last book I read that I gave 3 out of 5 stars to is I'm Thinking of Ending Things, by Ian Reid. It was weird. It was disturbing. I would have loved it if it wasn't for the last, 10 to 20 pages. I listened to it on audiobook, which the audiobook was good. I also had, an ebook for it. It's disturbing. I originally got it because I thought the title alluded to somebody who wanted to commit suicide. It's actually about a girl who was thinking about ending things with her boyfriend, and you kind of follow their relationship, them going on this road trip to go meet his family for the first time. There's a lot that goes on, and it's wonderfully disturbing, wonderfully weird. I just didn't care for how it ended, which docked it a star. And that's about it. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more of my face and my books. Bye.